Hey, how's it going? It's your challenger coach, Adam Moriarty Isles, here to bring you our newest Mobalytics low-elo tier list for patch 9.24. Aphelios was just released, and you might be wondering how good he is, but like normal, we won't rank new champions till some data on them comes out. In my opinion though, with how many first-time pentakills people are getting all over Reddit, I'ma say he's gotta be at least pretty good, and not as hard as people initially thought, as maybe he just had a lot of reading to do, and that scared some people off. Also, if you're interested in my thoughts on patch 9.24 and how it will impact the meta, check out our patch rundown video, but with that out of the way, let's jump right into the tier list. For the top lane list, our starting S tier roster will be Garen, Malphite, Dr. Mundo, Yorick, Mordekaiser, Kled, and newcomer Singed. Singed might be one of the most annoying champions to play versus in the entire game, but during the preseason, thanks to a more offensive setup, he has become an even larger carry threat. It can become pretty frustrating. Once a Singed player gets priority, he just starts running through the enemy jungle, annoying the enemy jungler to death, or walking down to dive mid lane into a free dragon. Overall though, if you follow this setup and play for map once you get a lane lead, Singed puts out an absurd amount of pressure, which is why we're raising him from A to S tier. For the build, you're going to want to go a more AP-oriented style, with Rylai's Leandri's as your core with a Righteous Glory follow-up to help you engage, but you can actually swap that out for a Pertobel if you really want to carry hard and don't really care too much about your teammates, which, if I'm going to be real with you, if you're going to be maining Singed, that'll likely become the norm over time anyways. It just warps your brain. For your runes, you're just going to go a standard Conquer with Domination setup for the maximum damage plus healing to be as annoying as possible, which is always your goal as Singed. Pick up Singed if you don't care about learning to last tick, control the minion wave, or land skill shots, but you still want LP and have a working mouse. Our next change will be moving Tree Man Maokai from B tier to A tier. Currently, tanks are becoming more and more popular as the meta is shifting towards top lane being an island where they occasionally are summoned to fight a dragon, which is a style that tanks excel at. This is especially true in the current meta because outside of top lane, there's a lot of powerful DPS champions that Maokai can easily tank for, like Ryze or Cassiopeia, while denying the enemy Akali any chance to play the game in teamfights. For his build, your core items will be Sunfire Cape, Spirit Visage with Righteous Glory 3rd. Build them in whatever order you need based on your lane matchup and finish the build off with whatever other tank items you need for that situation, but most commonly you can just default to Stoneplate, it'll be pretty good in most games. Runes, you're gonna take Aftershock with Inspiration secondary for Biscuits and Time Warp Tonic to give you the mana pool you need till Righteous Glory is actually built, and it'll give you that extra movement speed for trading potential so you can actually win lane. Pick up Maokai if you're a tank player who enjoys the simple joy of denying enemy Rivens and Camille players the ability to have fun or even play the game. Kind of like when you're a kid and you destroy your friend's sandcastle. Not that I've ever done that, you know, it's just a hypothetical, but if I did do that, I would tell you it feels pretty damn good. That means our next highlighted champion will be Volibear Top, which isn't too popular on the North American server, but in a different, potentially stronger region, it sees a lot of play in EU. Volibear Top's dueling power is no joke, and it can completely deny the enemy champions like Riven or Camille who rely on mobility thanks to his E. Kinda like Maokai or Poppy, but instead of watching them walk away in shame after they get completely stuffed, Volibear just slaps them around for a second until they die. For the build, your core item is going to be Titanic Hydra, Deadman's Plate, and Wit's End. The build is more bruiser oriented, and since he likes attack speed, plus he does magic damage, Wit's End actually suits him pretty well. To round out the build, add in a Spirit Visage, Sunfire Cape, or a Sterak's as needed. For your runes, a Conqueror setup is best with a Resolve secondary to keep you tanky while still building somewhat offensive. You're going to want to pick the Bear Top if you want to play a win lane playstyle and you like slapping people around. Real quick though, before we head to the next section, we actually moved Quinn and Teemo down as they aren't really able to impact the dragon meta very well, and Alawi also moved down because she just sucks versus the massive amount of range tops at the moment. And lastly, Riven moved up from the Shadow Realm to B tier as she is somewhat playable now, even at lower levels of play. In the jungle, our S tier roster for the low-elo list will be Nocturne, Volibear, Nunu, Echo, Shaco, and the Return of the King, Warwick. Let's start off with the changes to the list, with Vi and Dr. Mundo moving down to A tier. This is not due to them getting weaker, alright? But the divide between them and the top tier junglers like Echo and Warwick is just getting bigger. The jungle meta right now just has such a huge divide in power between its S tier and A tier that we couldn't keep them there anymore. Shyvana and Graves, on the other hand, moved down from A to B tier as their popularity and hype don't really match their current success on the Rift, and by that I mean they're pretty mediocre. Diana got that nice little rework, and it's also Flares' pick of the patch, so stay tuned for that when the video is released to hear more about how she's doing. That makes it so that our first highlighted champion will be Amumu, as not only did he receive some buffs to his early game QCD, but he also has a new interesting hybrid damage build that he can use to be both tanky and deal a decent amount of DPS. For the build, you're gonna want to go Cinder Hulk with Blue Smite so that you miss your Q less often, into Frozen Heart and Liandry's as your core. You can then follow it up with an Abyssal Mask if you need some MR, or even a Zhonya's. This build has an odd synergy though at the moment, with Frozen Heart passive proccing the bonus true damage for Liandry's, allowing Amumu to be a damage threat and a tank at the same time. For his runes, run a normal setup with Aftershock with either Precision Secondary or my personal favorite, which is Water Walking and Nimbus Cloak, as I feel it gives him a lot more versatility. Pick up Amumu if you like playing low mechanical champions that have strong scaling and team fighting, where saying GG easy at the end of the game shouldn't be bannable, as it's just stating a fact. He's just that easy. Next up, let's talk about Master Yeezy, as he is a premier low elo stomper for years now, and perfectly suits a meta that is farm heavy and focuses on neutral objectives. Now, don't get me wrong, he does work fine on his own and can do some pretty cheesy jungle pathing to get some early surprise kills, which you can check out on our Instagram to find out the exact details on, but for sure he works best with a duo. You don't even need to necessarily funnel, but you just need someone who can provide you with enough utility to deny the enemy team any hope to outcarry the master himself. For the build, stick with Skirmisher's Blood Razor into Rageblade Death Dance as your core. After that, you can follow it up with Wit's End, GA, Starox, Mercurial, or even Aranduin's, because he doesn't necessarily need pure damage items to carry, he just needs to live long enough to auto a couple of times, that's it. For runes, big shocker, you're gonna go Conqueror Domination. Pick up Master Yi if you don't have your minimap enabled, as you don't like your laners or ganking for them, but you like farming NPCs in the early game and getting pentakills in the late game. Last up, let's talk about an actually aggressive jungle champion, and that's Echo, who is still just as godly as he was last season, potentially even stronger. Echo has an extremely efficient clear that is still quick, and due to his ultimate, even if your bot lane happens to lose lane, which you know might happen once in a while, you can still tumble over the dragon pit to steal the dragon, then ult back to safety so that you don't lose the most important objective in the game. For his build, go Stalker's Blade with Runic Echoes into Protobelt Lichbane as your core. Follow it up with more AP items like Death Cap, Void Staff, Zhonya's, or even a Liandry's if needed. Some Echoes do skip the belt, but I personally like it as it can be the deciding factor between getting in range for your stun, your E, or getting behind your target for the second portion of Q. Rune-wise, you're going to want to Harvest Their Souls as your primary. Then for your secondary, you're going to want to take Sorcery for Water Walking Nimbus Cloak, which is so good on Echo, alright? It makes you impossible to catch or escape from. Really try it out, it feels good. You're going to want to pick up Echo if you like an assassin jungler that can 1v9 while also having absurd levels of survivability and mobility. Fair warning though, he has Yasuo syndrome, as you get drunk off your own power and mobility and you end up dying despite all of your defensive tools. Trust me on this, alright? I'm speaking from experience. Moving on to the mid lane low elo list, our starting S tier roster will be Diana, Malzahar, Fizz, Mordekaiser, Kassadin, Swain, and Heimerdinger 1. First up, we move Nocturne and Echo down from S tier to A tier, as not only are they performing better in the jungle in this bracket, but Nocturne in particular post Sanguine Blade nerfs and people adjusting to him, his win rate is in the decline, so we dropped him down. But just like Echo, he could be either S- or A+, we'll just have to see. On the other hand, Swain has slid into S tier from A tier to take their place. Now, you might be thinking, isn't he a Conqueror user? Why move him up? Well, truth is, not only is Electrocute more popular on him at higher levels of play from mid lane, but it's, you know, a measly 5% stronger at Plat Plus, so I think he'll be just fine. That's because the reason he does well in mid lane is that he is tanky enough to negate assassin picks while also having enough AoE damage to 1v2 ganks. It's kind of like the same reason Mordekaiser is strong at lower levels of play, just too tanky. For the build, go Rod of Ages into Zhonya's with the Liandry's. Sorcerer shoes are your go-to boots, with other items like Death Cap, Morello's Void Staff being a solid option after your core items. For your runes, take Electrocute with Sorcery Secondary from Manifold Band plus Scorch to give you the best possible chance to snowball the laning phase, which is all that matters at the moment in solo queue. Pick up Swain if you like a ranged version of Mordekaiser, but also like that other people can land CC for you instead of you having to land your own skill shots. Or you're just a Star Wars fan who really wants to be an edgelord, Sith Lord. Next up, my man, returning from the Shadow Realm, it's your boy Dwayne the Rock Wizard Johnson. That's right, AP Malphite is back with a 53.57% win rate at all ranks. This is because he has a very easy gank setup during the laning phase, allowing him for easy kills on the mid lane or when he roams to bot lane, allowing his team to secure dragons very easily. For the build, you're going to want to go Luden's Echo into Protobelt followed by a Death Cap. It's full damage, people. If you're snowballing on him, I expect to see a Medjai's, alright? You gotta throw in the Oblivion Orb after that, or even a Zhonya's if it's needed. But remember, you need the damage output to kill the enemy backline during a dragon fight. It's important. For runes, go Arcane Comet to poke people down into kill range with Domination Secondary for Cheap Shot and Ultimate Hunter. Pick up the Rock Wizard if you want to clap people with the best auto attack animation in the game while being able to one-shot entire teams if you snowball. If you don't snowball though, it's okay. You're still useful, just build Zhonya's earlier so you can still engage fights. But never stop building AP. Do not back down on this. We are mid laners, we build damage, or else why are we even here? Another champion I'd like to highlight for this patch is the new Diana. Lots of people are excited about her new kit, especially jungle mains, but personally, I think she's going to be more viable in the mid lane, thus we're going to keep her in S tier. You should take a note though, she is slightly different now, playing more of an AP bruiser style like Sylas would instead of her old nuclear one-shot clickbait style. Let's be real, you know there's something wrong with the champion when death cap first is an acceptable build. That should never happen. But for her new build, I suggest we go with the old school Rod of Ages Gnasher's Tooth into Deathcap. You can throw in a Zhonya's Void Staff or Leandri's whenever you need them. Now, I have seen some people skipping the Roa, but for now I feel more confident with the consistency of the build I listed above. Since she is more DPS focused now, for her runes you're gonna want to go Lethal Tempo. Just kidding. It's clearly going to be Conqueror Domination Secondary. I just got really bored of saying that. Pick up Diana if you're a fan of her in past seasons, like the split push, or you were a Sylas main and are looking for a new home because your champion died. She is pretty much the closest thing to a mobile AP bruiser now. Now for the bot lane S tier roster, we have Jinx, Jhin, Ashe, Caitlyn, and Heimerdinger. You'll notice that this time around, the bot lane S tier is a little smaller than the last time, with Yasuo bot not doing as well in the past, likely due to the dominance of CC supports like Leona and Nautilus locking him down. While Senna also dropped down due to the nerfs to her passive, the AD ratio on her Q, and the root duration on her W. Don't worry though, because she got an AP ratio increased on her ultimate. I'm making some really funny jokes on these patch notes sometimes, I gotta give him credit. Alright though, a champion who is not a joke is Lucian, as we are moving him from B tier to A tier this patch. His lane dominant playstyle and strong presence in early game fights makes him a pretty good pickup during this meta. The reason he's doing better now though is that the Lucian community is no longer split on what his best setup is. Before, people were going full crit, board with crit, press the attack, conquer, and just like mixing things up, but lately pro players have pretty much settled down on what the best setup is. For your build, you're gonna want to take Blade of the Ruin King, Essence Reaver into Infinity Edge. Finish the build with a Zeal item like Rapid Fire Cannon or Phantom Dancer with a utility item like Mercurial in your last slot. For your runes, you're going to want to stick with Press the Attack since the Conqueror nerfs came in. It's performing a lot better with Inspiration Secondary for free boots and biscuits. Pick up Lucian if you like a high-tempo, aggressive mobile laner who will also do well in High-ELO as you climb. He's also pretty fun to play, feels slick, and you won't get flamed for picking him like you would if you picked Ezreal. Next up, let's talk about that Ashe, as she is a champion everyone knows exists, everyone knows is strong, and yet more people are not picking her. She might not be too flashy, and I get that, but she's one of the most consistent marksman pick in the current meta, who is both able to provide utility and carry with DPS during the late game. Not to mention, she is a counter to the new champion Ophelio, so you can just leave him up and bait the enemy team to pick him, which, you know, they will, and then you just insta-lock Ashe for a free win. For her build, keep it simple with her Bork into Runons into IE setup. I know she has a build with Trinity Force and Comet and it's a poke style, but I'm gonna be honest, that build is worse than the normal one, as right now there's a lot of frontline champions, especially from the support role, and you need the Bork to be able to kill them. For her runes, run Lethal Tempo with Inspiration Secondary for free boots and approach velocity to give you as much hands-off chase down potential as possible. Remember to pick up Ashe if you like marksman with long range, poke damage, engage, and a permaslow that is so strong, I'm often just gonna lift my hands up off the keyboard if I'm killing someone with no mana, just for the extra BM. Last up for bot lane, let's talk about Jhin, as he's becoming more and more popular. Jhin's build path during the preseason is just so powerful. With his early game kill setups, he can easily snowball the laning phase to get those sweet dragons. Jhin's just one of those champions that when he's strong, everyone wants to play him, including a lot of pro players who are practicing him at the moment, so I'd jump in on the bandwagon if I were you. To do so properly, let's go over his build, which is Stormracer Infinity Edge into a Zeal item, which is most commonly Rapid Fire Cannon. After that, you can either build a secondary Zeal item or go for more defensive options like BT, Mercurial, or Guardian Angel. For his runes, you're going to want to take Fleet Footwork and Presence of Mind to cover your lack of mana sustain, as you're going to skip Essence Reaver in this setup. As for your secondary rune options, the Jhin community is a little split on this, either going Sorcery Secondary or Inspiration, but at least for me, with how quick the meta is, I prefer Inspiration Secondary for them free boots and biscuits. Pick up Jhin if you're like me and you like to play marksman but don't like to or know how to kite with high attack speed. Our support S tier roster is looking like it's gonna be Janna, Brand, Leona, Nautilus, Soraka, Blitzcrank, Zyra, and Shaco. Let's start off with some of the champions who dropped in ELO, being Senna moving down from A tier to B tier due to her nerfs. Despite them being intended for the AD carry role, they will still hurt her as a support. Pyke also moved down from A tier to B tier, but not due to direct nerfs like Senna. It's mostly just because he just isn't that good at the moment. He just dies far too quickly to all the CC oriented supports and even AD carries that are in balling at the moment. He is straight up a liability if you aren't a god at him, so moving him down. Blitzcrank, though, one of my favorite supports, is definitely not a liability. In fact, he makes the enemy balling a liability thanks to his super strong kill setup. In the past, Blitzcrank would run into this problem where he would win lane with his superior intellect and beauty and then lose the game because people would just get way too tanky, so that even when he did land a hook, people just didn't die, making him pretty useless. In the current meta though, his balling kill pressure is extremely valuable for securing neutral objectives and early skirmish wins, so he doesn't have to really think too much past the laning phase, or really at all. For his build as your core, you're going to want to go Righteous Glory, Zeke's Convergence, and a Knight's Vow in any order you like. You can also throw in a Locket or Redemption or even a Shrillius, as the build path is pretty versatile, so just stick to tank items. For his runes, go Aftershock with Inspiration Secondary. Personally, I'm a big advocate of Hex Flash, but if you really don't like it or you aren't good with it, you can still go Biscuits with Cosmic Insight. Pick up Blitzcrank if you want to play a hook champion but Nautilus is banned and you aren't good enough to pull off Thresh. Next up, we got the legendary Bard, aka El Bardo, aka Brad, going from B tier to A tier. This is a champion that we here at Mobalytics are pretty hesitant to move up on the list because, well, he can actually cause not only self-harm, but harm to his teammates when played improperly. But thanks to him being one of the best alcove abusers in the game and his heavy roam style being extremely useful if he connects plays with his jungler, he has been dominating not only low elo but high elo as well, so we feel pretty confident moving him up. For his build, every Bard player does something different because Brad mains are, commonly pretty quirky, but I spent a lot of time looking up the numbers behind what's good and what's weird, so here you go. For your core build, you're gonna want to go Proto Belt into Twin Shadows with a Redemption. For the runes, go Electrocute with Resolve Secondary to stop you from minting just slightly less, cause let's face it, you're playing Bard. Pick up Bard if you like a more carry-oriented roam support who can either make mega big brain plays or the complete opposite of that in the same game. That means that for the first time in a very long time, Braum will actually be somewhat of a viable pick in solo queue thanks to the buffs Riot gave him this patch to his survivability and his ult moving him from the Shadow Realm to B tier. Thing about Braum is that he is a peel support, but he wasn't that much tankier than things like Leona or Nautilus, who were able to also engage and set up picks way easier than Braum could. But with his increased survivability, he should have a place on the Rift again as a champion that you can stand behind to help keep carries like Ashe or Philios alive so that they can deal tons of damage. For his build, you're going to want to go Zeke's Knight's Vow and a Locket as strong core items on him, with items like Shrillius or Redemption coming in handy later into the game. Not to mention, he might also be the only support champion I recommend not going mobility boots on and instead stick to Talbies or Mercs. For his runes, you're just going to take Guardian with Inspiration Secondary for Cosmic Insight. You're going to want to pick up Braum if you like to play a tanky peel-oriented support who has one of the best level wins in the game. No joke, you get some free wins off that alone. Thanks again for watching our low elo tier list for patch 9.24. Feel free to ask us any questions in the comment section below for us to answer in the next Q&A. We will also be releasing a high-elo tier list and a pick of the patch video, so stay tuned for that, and make sure to check out more stuff at mobalytics.gg. I'm Adam Moriarty Isles, and I'll see you out on the Rift.